The liquor industry believes taverns can be used to tackle the scourge. Added to this is the fact that more than half of all tavern owners are women. Many have themselves been subjected to gender-based violence. The industry and an NGO called Act Now has identified 20 taverns in hotspots in Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, the Eastern Cape and the Western Cape to host dialogues on gender-based violence during this month of August, which in South Africa we mark as our Women's Month because of the Women's Day that's coming up on the 9th of August and the contribution women made in the liberation struggle in our country. Now let's find out more from the convener of the National Liquor Traders Association, that's Lucky Ntimane. Inhlikani Tata Ntimane, thank you very much for coming through. Welcome to today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
So, my introduction is linking behavior in terms of people consuming alcohol and then becoming violent, especially against women. But it also makes a very important point that more than half of the owners of taverns are women. And we don't understand that. And that's important to understand. Hence, I guess you are doing this initiative.
Yes, indeed. So we understand that the month of August is very important in the South African context, in that women took up that fight in the 1950s to fight against the Dom Pass. So now we are bringing it back to say that as liquor traders, majority of which are women, we ought to be able to take the fight and fight gender-based violence. So we are on our third year running on Tavern dialogues on gender-based violence that we have partnered with South African Police Services, as well as the Minister of Police with General Begekele leading the charge, as well as Distel as the founder of this program. But we've also realized that because we have 39,000 taverns across the country, it means that we have the real estate to be able to host this type of dialogues to effect change with our people on the ground. The footfall of taverns per month amounts to between 8 and 10 million. So it means that we are able to interact with that number of people across the affected areas.
You said it's the third year in a row you're doing this. Is there something new you're going to do in this year, particularly because of all the challenges and pose the Krugerstop attack?
What we have learned in the past 2 years is that we need to be able to create tavern forums, which encourages the patrons and the tavern owners to be able to engage on a weekly basis on issues that affect them, but also affect the society. As we know that taverns cannot be removed from the ecosystem of a township environment. What we see in a tavern is actually a mirror of what happens in communities. So it is important that we do not just do this as a tick box exercise, but involves the community, involves even those that are not patrons to come into these taverns and engage on issues of gender-based violence.
Now, these 20 taverns that you've selected in the hotspots of Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, Eastern Cape and the Western Cape, will they be running these programs every day? Are they similar programs? Will there be a pledge, for example, that you'd ask the patrons to sign or make?
Yes, indeed. So we have a key word that we call neon. Never in our name will gender-based violence happen. So they are going to sign in these pledges across these 20 taverns that have been identified. But that number, 20 taverns, come from the high incidence of gender-based violence as reported in the previous statistics released by the Minister of Police. Like we know in our introduction that, for example, between the month of January and March in 2022, there were 10,818 rape cases reported in the country. 1,206 of those were linked to alcohol, which is 12% of all the reported incidents. So we are saying as the alcohol industry, and certainly with our partners, that we cannot allow a situation where liquor is linked to any issue of gender-based violence in the country. So we are doing our part, taking the responsibility of that 12%.
Just to have some nitty-gritty detail a little bit, this is a tavern dialogue. So what happens there? What takes place? Just give us an example.
So in a tavern dialogue, we have experts that are coming from Act Now, who engages with the tavern owner, but as well as the patrons, to try and understand issues that give rise to gender-based violence issues. So men do not like to open up, but now we get them in an environment where they are socially active, they are socially aware of their surroundings, but then they are able to talk about issues beyond soccer and other things that they normally would talk about. Now they're able to open up and talk about emotional issues that drain them, that might lead to gender-based violence, and encourage solutions in that regard so that we can be able to fight gender-based violence, all of us.
Third year in a row. The past years, did you get some successes?
We have seen some success. I think when you look at the statistics, that almost 12% of gender-based violence in a country could be linked to alcohol. That is a low number, as compared to what people could think that, all gender-based violence
But
issues.
ideally, it should be 0%.
Ideally, it should be 0%.
Like
yeah, so that's why we are taking that responsibility to say that as the alcohol industry, we are going to do something about it, and we are doing it.
Now, in your statement as the association, as you're announcing what you're going to be doing with the Tavern Dialogues, you also mentioned the fact that the Never in Our Name pledge has also been signed by 450 taxi operators. Is that an example to encourage more people to do so?
So as the National Liquor Traders, we see a role of bringing the whole of society to fighting gender-based violence. It must not only be limited to liquor traders. So because we have a formal partnership with Santaco, for example, we felt the need to get all the taxi operators in the country to sign the Tavern pledges, to take that lead, because we know that Santaco, for example, has an influence transporting over 60 million people a day at peak. So we needed to be able to cover the whole of township, which is the taxi and the liquor traders.
So you've identified some key stakeholders to be part of the ecosystem, which makes sense. Now, finally, from my side, you are doing these Tavern Dialogues in terms of gender-based violence, but there's always the issue of irresponsible drinking.
Yes.
And that's really, affecting quite a lot of our society. And if we can use the tragedy of Enyobeni, where 21 young people died, we were told as they arrived at the tavern, which is now closed, they were already met with bottles of Savannah Dries, already open for them, these youngsters to be given. What are you going to be doing as part of this campaign, this month particularly, to continue promoting and encouraging responsible drinking?
Firstly, let us admit that the issue of irresponsible usage of alcohol is a problem that we have managed to sweep under the carpet as a country for a very number of years. I think it's about time that we confront it, but we also need to understand that this is not only a liquor trader problem. It is a whole society. We see an analogy of a village, to say it takes a village to raise a child. We cannot define ourselves out of that village. We as liquor traders need to take that responsibility, but also community, parents need to take that responsibility. That is the only way in which we can fight this.
Okay, it's only 4 provinces that are going to be covered, those hotspots you've identified, for the reasons that the stats by the police, the crime stats by the police, have identified them as such. And depending how this month goes, are you thinking as an association to expand this to other provinces? Because, as you correctly said, it's a societal problem.
Yes, certainly. We are speaking to other liquor manufacturers as well to come on board so that we can expand this. 20 taverns, as we can all agree, it's not enough. We have 39,000 taverns, so this is not even a drop in the ocean. We need to be able to roll out these type of programs across the country. This should be something that we do on a daily basis and not just a once-off event. Thank
you very much. That's Lakinti Mane, the convener of the National Liquor Traders, speaking about what is coming up this month in terms of their efforts to contribute in the fight against gender-based violence.